All right, guys, here's your guy Wardy, and we're back at it with our latest Mets video to break down. And I'm excited to get into this one here because while we know that there's still baseball to be had at the time of this video dropping, including a doubleheader between the Mets and the Orioles, but let's first get into what's happening on the news and rumor front. And no better person to do it with me than Samantha Croston, great friend of the platform that many of you guys know, the co-host of Why My Mets Fan podcast, and doing a fantastic job there as that local sports director based out of Syracuse. Because Samantha is going to share not only her opinions, but what she's been hearing out of Syracuse regarding the likes of Manaea and Senga. What is the expectation with both of them returning the Mets and the rotation this weekend, as well as Francisco Alvarez? What is he doing right there, maybe in Syracuse, versus what he was doing wrong there at the big league level, along with the key report that dropped over the past 24 hours that we're going to start today's segment with. We all know the Mets and David Stearns are going to be going after starters big time from now until the deadline. They've been linked to Mitch Keller over the past couple of days. Now they're linked to another very interesting right-handed arm, this time in Edward Cabrera. So a lot of breakdown in this one, everybody. But before we do so, Samantha, how are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much, as always, for having me. I think this time around even more exciting because, as you said, I was able to actually speak with Manaea. So I'm excited to tell you guys what he said and talk about all the other topics that we're discussing today.
Oh, likewise, especially on the case of the Simone Southpaw. We're all dying to have him back in this rotation. So looking forward to that, guys. But before we break down Edward Cabrera and everything else in between in this one, make sure to hit that like and subscribe on your way in. Let us know your thoughts and reactions in the comments down below to today's following topics. And hear a quick word from your guy Wardy here from the past to talk about something that's upcoming here in the near future. Listen up, everybody. It's Wardy here, and as you can see, we are at gorgeous Citi Field, and folks, you can get the ultimate, the prime experience with your guy Wardy at our first ever official Wardy Day. August 1st, Mets San Francisco Giants there for the evening game. The day after the MLB trade deadline, you, your friends, your loved ones, select Mets fans will get the ultimate experience with your guy Wardy. Not only are we going to hang out at the ball game together, but folks, look at the seating. We're going to be live here in the left field lounge. You guys will be able to chop it up with your guy Wardy. We're going to be debating as to who's the best pitcher of the rotation outside of Senga. We're going to be talking about who's the next best prospect to get called up. How do we feel about the trade deadline acquisitions? And guys, as you get back up here then, we are going to be giving you a $18 drink voucher, and with that drink voucher, you guys are going to be able to hit up the bars that we have right outside of here. So easy, so accessible. Again, prime seating, a truly fantastic experience. Our first ever Wardy Day here at Citi Field, guys, where you will get a chance to hang out with your guy Wardy. And the best part too, not only is it this amazing lounge in left field that you guys will hang out with me, but we're going to be on the field, pre-game access there for a group photo op. So I hope to see you, all you amazing Mets fans there. Click the link if you guys haven't already there to check out our available tickets, and let's go Mets. And not only are we going to be sitting here throughout the course of the ball game, you guys can also check out the seats that we have access to all here in the bar area here, right at the Milagro, where you guys can utilize your $18 drink voucher. Again, this is going to be at Wardy Day, August 1st, 2025. Oh wait, yeah, almost forgot. It's also fireworks night. Bang! Hope to see you guys there. Alrighty, folks, again, if you want to check out Wardy Day, just simply click the link down below here. That'll be pinned at the top for you guys to check out, and thank you so much for that. As well as shout out to not only all you guys watching this right now, to all you amazing Mets fans, but also to the sponsors that make today's show happen, including our great friends at SeatGeek. Make sure to utilize our promo code WARDY10. That way you too got 10% off your next ticket purchase, especially with the Mets playing good baseball right now. You might as well get involved while you certainly can, maybe before the All-Star break. If you're not far from Baltimore for those Orioles games, are certainly there. Kansas City for those Royals matchups before the All-Star break happens, everybody, as well as our amazing friends here at BetUS that has you covered on the sports betting front. Please make sure you guys and gals are betting responsibly should you have interest, but if you do, head over to betus.com.pa today and utilize our promo code YouTube150 because you're going to get a 150% bonus on that first deposit, everybody. And as you guys can see beside me right now, David Pearson to have 5+ strikeouts, and for the Mets to win there is at plus 100 there for the odds in one of those games for that doubleheader matchup, everybody. So if you guys want to play this before that doubleheader kick starts, by all means go ahead. If you guys don't, that's perfectly fine as well. But when it comes to picks, props, plays, and of course your casino, you name it, BetUS has you covered today. But Samantha, let's get into this one, and let's first talk about the fact that when we were going to make this video initially, we weren't going to talk about any trade news or rumblings going on, but that quickly changed just over the past couple hours at the time of us recording this right now. So let's get into it. Let me start with just by asking you, what was your initial reaction to hear that the Mets are in the market, not only for just any starter, but specifically the young right-hander Edward Cabrera there from the Miami Marlins?
I mean, honestly, I like the idea of it, at least for now. Looking up some of his stats, right? 78.1 innings pitched, 80 strikeouts, 3.3 ERA. I if the Mets are going to go in there and get a pitcher, okay? For me, what matters the most is that it's somebody who is on their way up. When I think about Cabrera, I think about somebody who right now is having a breakout moment, perhaps a breakout season. I don't want somebody who struggled in their last 7 outings. I don't want someone who is plagued by injuries. And I don't want question marks, especially if you're going to be paying money to get this guy. That's what it always comes down to when you're thinking about deals at this point in time, right? Mid-season. Does it make sense? Is it a good deal? And perhaps most importantly, who would you need to give up for him? I see some rumors that it would be Vientos. Whether or not that's a good deal, I guess that remains to be seen. But I am somebody who sits squarely in the boat of I want success now. I want success for the Mets this season, and I want to see postseason success in the form of them being in the World Series. Whatever it takes, I'm interested in doing that.
Oh, yeah, you and I both. And I think we could all agree that the one Achilles heel that this Mets team has had so far this season, outside of a lack of productivity with runners in scoring position, that thankfully started to change that we've seen the Mets winning 5 of their past 6 games at the time of us recording right now. But it's that lack of consistency in the rotation. You know, it was the perfect storm with Frankie Montas still needing to return. Same thing with Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga. But when Senga first went down with injury, that was like a huge domino to fall. And since then, that led the Mets into a huge swamp of 3 week stretch of only winning 4 games out of 18, yet somehow, some way, they're tied for first place again. Again, absolutely insane what the current structure of this is. But when you look at Edward Cabrera in particular and what he could bring to this Mets team, there's a lot of positives to it. And I think when you look at the other options out there currently at the deadline available for Stearns, Mitch Keller from the Pirates that they've been connected to does make a level of sense. I don't hate the idea of Sandy either, but I love the idea of guys who are right now pitching their best baseball. And that's what Cabrera is doing. So naturally, if you're going to acquire someone like him, you're going to have to give to get, right? This is not a Sandy who's having a down year and only has 1 year left of his contract. This is a young Cabrera at the age of 27 who's under team control until the 2029 offseason, right? So you have to give to get here if you're this Mets team. And with a 3.3 ERA, a 3.78 expected ERA thus far, there's a lot to like about Cabrera and his game. He used to be very wild thing, Samantha. I don't know how familiar you are, but a couple years ago when Cabrera made his debut there for the Marlins, he was hitting everybody and their mother in the Mets lineup, like drilling everybody, just had no command of the strike zone whatsoever. So it's taken a bit for him to get from where he was a couple years ago to where he is now. Far more polished, far more dominant in the zone. And this added to the heart of this Mets rotation right now. We're looking at a guy that has potential ace upside with how nasty his stuff is when he's right. So you mentioned Vientos. I'm glad you did, in the sense that it feels almost impossible for the Mets to make a trade for someone like Cabrera without giving up at minimum one of those key infielders of the Mauricios, the Beatties, the Vientoses, the Luis Angel Acuñas, etc. Because Mets have a logjam right there, and they have all these guys pretty much without minor league options, and it's kind of make or break in the sense that who's going to stay on this roster versus who isn't. And as much as I thoroughly enjoy Mark Vientos and don't want the Mets to give up on him too soon, I do think that Cabrera is certainly an exception where Vientos can be one of those key pieces of the puzzle to make a deal happen. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's wrong for the team in 2025 trying to win now. I think that makes endless sense for the club, because it's not like you're acquiring just a rental in itself. And Mark, while he did grow up a New York Mets fan, he is a Florida native. He's very familiar. He knows that ballpark better than anyone else. You know, that isn't an active Miami Marlin. So I'm sure that offensively he would be able to transition and really bode well in a lineup that doesn't have expectation, and a guy like Kyle Stowers as well, who's already on the All-Star team because of how well he's playing there representing Miami. So to expand more on just Vientos, what are other players that you personally would be comfortable with? Because let's remember, Samantha, if you're going to give up assets, we know that the Mets have an abundance of pitching now to choose from. And if you're going to acquire a guy with, say, 4 years of control, you're probably going to have to consider giving up one of your more heralded pitching prospects in the process. So if there's one that you think makes more sense than others out of that group, who do you think it would be and why?
Well, out of curiosity, are you saying just from the Mets who I would be okay with giving up, meaning a Beatty or an Acuna or someone else?
In the sense of infielders, yes. But then I'm asking you, pitching-wise, one of those prospects, if they had to bite the bullet and trade one of Sproat, one of McLean, one of Ton, and maybe to a degree Tidwell,
Mhm.
who do you think makes the most sense, that you would be able to stomach best to part ways with?
Right. Out of those options, then I guess I'm going McLean.
Ooh,
I will
interesting.
say that the reason that I'm saying that, there is a little bit of recency bias with it, and you'll see that when we get to our segment when you ask me who I've had my eyes on lately in AAA. Sproat would be hard to stomach. Like, that would be tough for me. Honestly, as far as some of the other guys, again, it goes back to that question of, are you more interested in success now or success later? McLean, maybe even Tong. I mean, honestly, both of them together is still something that I think I would be able to navigate and feel okay about. I think Sproat is somebody you want to hold on to, if I'm being honest. That's it gets a little dicey for me there when I think about the potential and the upside that he has, and when I think about the fact that all of the broadcasters who work at this level tell me that they think that he has the most potential out of any of the pitchers that they have seen going back to Christian Scott. So that's something I don't feel comfortable with. But beyond that, I am okay with some of the other prospects if that's what it takes. And honestly, I know this isn't necessarily the question you asked, but even beyond Vientos, right? I think when you think about Beatty, Acuna, all of the different guys who are there right now, let's be honest in saying you don't actually need that entire gaggle to be successful at this moment in time. There's almost an abundance of infielders. I thought that when McNeil came back, he might not play as well as he's been playing. He's actually kind of been outperforming most of those guys. So I don't necessarily know that you have to hold on to all the players that you have right now.
Yeah, I think especially in the case of those infielders, you're right. It is an abundance. You can make that rightful argument. And that's why I think Stearns especially is going to be not, so willing to cut bait, but understanding that this is something that's going to probably be best for the organization and for whatever player that they may find themselves partying with. And, to put a cap on the Edward Cabrera discussion here, just to make note, his arsenal, again, it's fantastic. Not only does he have a changeup that he's thrown more than anything this season, right around 25% of the time, that he's sitting, right around 94 on the gun with his changeup. Then he has a sinker that's sitting 97 that he throws 23% of the time. He has a curveball at 22% that he sits right around 84. The slider at 17% at 88, touching 90 plus, and the four seam. And then what I love most about Cabrera is that a guy who has ridiculous velocity throws his four seam fastball the least. The reason why I like that is because we're not relying on a guy just to rear back and throw gas to have success, because that's something that I think we could all agree Brandon Sproat has struggled with up until really this past month to find that consistency with the shape of his fastball and how productive it can be at the minor league level. Cabrera is in the 85th percentile in fastball velocity, as sitting right around 97 this season, and in the 75th percentile in ground ball percentage, while being above league average in strikeout percentage. So again, all the boxes that you would want the Mets to get checked off if they're going to acquire a starter. And the final thing that I have to ask you in regards to this, Samantha, is the following. Are you more in favor of a guy like Cabrera in the sense of his upside, knowing that he's truly blossoming into something great now, versus maybe someone who we know is a certainty? Like, you already know what you're getting in a Luis Severino and a Seth Lugo, among those types. They might be more polished now, but you already know that they peaked in what you're getting. What do you say that the Mets would benefit most by going after a younger, controllable arm here versus someone who, again, a grizzled veteran, we know what we're getting?
Yes. My answer to that question is yes, I would feel more comfortable getting a younger pitcher. I understand that in a way there is an upside to knowing what you're going to get out of a vet, right? But it also means that they're older. I feel like if you are going to go out here and you are going to, try and get somebody like Cabrera, that appeals to me for more reasons than one. But the main one, back to my original point, is why not go out and get someone who is successful right now, but who also you don't know what their peak is. All you know is that if you were looking at a graph, it's been like this so far this season for Cabrera. I don't want somebody who is on the way down. I don't want somebody who's plagued with injuries. Even if there's a chance, you know what I mean, that something could go wrong. I want somebody who I think is going to be strong in the back half of the season, because if this past month has taught us anything, there is truly no amount of arms that is enough for the New York Mets. It doesn't matter how many people are in there, right? It's like, end of the day, it's not going to be enough. Something is going to happen. Someone is going to go down. And it's unfortunate because honestly, if you think about the Mets in the beginning of the year, a part of me might have told you, no, there's actually enough to survive this. When you had Manaea and Senga, the pitching was wow. I don't know what else to say other than that. But now, once you see what it looks like without those two in the rotation, and I do understand they're coming back, my God, has it been a different situation. And quite honestly, I know that this is a little off the mark, but some of those guys who I've been seeing, like, Love Lady, I quite honestly never want to see him again. I really don't.
I know, it's telling when a man named Dickie Lovelady, and yet there's only so much to love. It's a problem, right? So I think
Wardy,
I
get
know,
that guy out of there.
I know, but listen, he is going to get out of here soon, thankfully, and he's going to get out of here hopefully as soon as, if not this week's, then post All Star break. Because there's a quick transition on the reliever front we could talk briefly on. It's Brooks Raley. Raley's been dominating all rehab long, and he just had himself another 1.1 scoreless outing this past day at the time of us talking right now in Syracuse. I know Carlos Mendoza was just speaking glowingly. They're very impressed with what they're getting from Raley right now. But I think another thing too, and you could give a quick answer on this if you want, Samantha. Raley, who obviously has had past success with the Mets going back to 2023 and to begin 2024, is a fantastic lefty option in the bullpen. But would you like the Mets to still add a higher leverage arm there, specifically southpaw? Because maybe you're saying, as good as Raley is, it never hurts to have more than just one quality lefty option in your bullpen.
I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I don't necessarily think that it should be the main priority, but I wouldn't be upset to see it happen. I do feel like lately, it's been a little bit sketchy in some of those middle innings. I mean, it's tough to say, right? Like, I think, there's a guy like Reed Garrett who honestly, I, for the most part, have been liking what I've been seeing. At the same time, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of things are in flux as far as that's concerned. I wouldn't mind seeing one other addition. But when it comes down to it, for me, the starting pitching is the most important thing from an injury standpoint alone. I would hate to see a situation where the Mets just simply aren't strong enough to make it through the whole season. Just if you think back to last year, okay? I think that a lot of people were really surprised at how far the Mets made it. But if we're all being honest, even the Mets at their best, which I think they were, you got to a place like the Dodgers in the NLCS, and I just don't think the Mets were strong enough to beat them and overcome them, even at their best, right? Like the Dodgers just had more of everything. And I want the Mets to be at a place where when they come back to that, and it likely is the Dodgers who they're facing, I want to see that they're able to actually have the strength to fight.
Absolutely. And especially when you look at depth, this is something that we have been beating this drum as Mets fans for years. It feels like yesterday guys like Jared Eichhoff were towing the rubber for the Mets in 2021. And that's when you really knew that they had no pitching early. And it's grateful to say that, okay, now the Mets, after having injuries in flux all throughout the year, currently having more people on the injured list than any other team in baseball with 16 plus right now. They will be getting two key arms off that injured list starting this Friday with Kodai Senga. So let's pivot now into getting into these reinforcements. And with both Kodai and Manaea, one, what are your initial expectations for them to return this weekend in Kansas City? And secondly, what do you have to say about this entire rotation configuration now getting two absolutely massive pieces back to the puzzle here in just a couple days?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is just like, thank God. I mean, there were guys who we were hearing when the Mets were facing the Yankees where I think even beyond a casual fan, you're like, who the F is this? Sorry, excuse my language, but genuinely, it's like we needed something different. We needed some of these guys back who were performing well in the beginning of the year, and I think you actually are going to get that. It is possible that Manaea might not be as consistent as he was to start the year, but all I can tell you is what I heard from him yesterday. Again, you mentioned it, but I am in Syracuse, so we were able to go, speak with Manaea after his rehab start here. Listen, he said in a way something that I felt was positive, which was that yes, he feels like he is past the injury. Yes, he does feel ready to start. He feels like for the most part this injury is behind him. At the same time, he did also admit that this was a little bit different for him. He has had a rehab injuries before, but not an injury like this one. It was a little bit more unfamiliar to him. And he said that the lesson that he learned was a lesson in patience. So what exactly that means, I will leave it up to all of your listeners to sort of decipher. But I think patience means maybe there, he was dealing with perhaps some setbacks or some things weren't going according to plan. We can only hope that if he is saying, yes, he feels over the injury, that he truly is over the injury.
Yeah, and we need him to be over the injury, as you said, because Sean Manaea, especially when he made that arm slot change midway last season, I mean, he became an ace for this Mets
Mhm.
team in a lot of ways. Going 7 scoreless outings for this team, doing things that we just were not expecting when we initially signed Sean Manaea to see what he would do after being previously more of a swingman type that we saw in the San Francisco Giants organization that year prior before landing with the Mets that we saw back in 2024. But, you talk about patience when it comes to Manaea. That is important too, because the injury that he sustained specifically with that oblique is something that I think back to Max Scherzer when he went down with it in 2023. And Max was a guy that, doesn't like to be waiting at all, especially a guy like him. He's like, what do you mean I have to sit here and do nothing? So naturally, that caused some hiccups with Max and his oblique injury. And I think unintentionally, the same thing happened with Manaea because he did have that setback after he went down there that we saw in spring training. And that it's such a sensitive injury that if you try to ramp up even the slightest when you're not 100%, you go all the way back to square one because Lindor had the oblique injury in 2021 and that derailed him that we saw in the second half of that year as well. I remember it like it was yesterday. And same thing with Jesse Winker. You just can't do anything when it happens. You just have to sit, be patient, and wait your turn to fully heal up and then get back out there. So I'm excited to see Sean back. And as you said, even if he's a little rusty, that's expected. Just the fact that the Mets are actually getting him before the All-Star break is a massive plus in itself to see what he looks like. And then Kodai Senga, the man who's been leading the charge with this rotation so far this year with a sub-2 ERA. I want to know, what have been your impressions of Senga up until his injury this year? And ultimately, what are you hoping to get back from him once he returns this Friday?
I mean, I thought that Senga was awesome. And truth be told, I feel in a way partially surprised just because of the way that he has rehabbed in the past. I feel like Senga, to me, I was thinking, even though I understood what kind of injury it was, I still was thinking in my head, like, we might not even see him until August. I just feel like he's slow to come back. He's slow to come back to being his 100% self. So again, I feel pleased with the timelines that we've seen. I feel pleased to know that we're getting these pitchers sooner rather than later because wow, did you really see the impact of not having them? You know what I mean? I think again with Senga, both of them, but maybe Senga in particular, just to have those guys back in the roster, it's important because you think about this slump, and I think that what you realize is that on the nights where the Mets hitters are doing a great job, the Fab Four, as people are starting to call them, and beyond, perhaps they could hang with anyone. But when they're not, when the bats are not batting, as I like to say on the Why My Mets Fan podcast, we got problems if there aren't pitchers in there who are actually able to pitch for 5 or 6 innings. Senga is somebody who I thought you were getting that really consistently from. And in many ways, I actually felt like he was sort of back to his old self. I think he is just deadly out there. I think he is ruthless. I think he is just an amazing pitcher for the Mets to have. And you really, really feel his absence when he's not there.
Very much so, especially when you look at the perfect storm of when he went down with injury and you were still a ways away from getting all your reinforcements back to the rotation. Then McGill goes down a couple days later. It's just one thing after another. And then Griffin Canning's like, okay, I'm just going to sadly pop my Achilles and let that be that. A very unfortunate dominoes to fall. But at least in the case of Kodai and Sean, they are returning here just in a couple of days. And that in itself is very exciting. So now let's get into basically one of our final topics, and that's Francisco Alvarez here, because Alvy has been absolutely laying up the lamp big time, having himself 4+ home runs since being sent down. He's been very productive there in Syracuse. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you've been hearing with Francisco Alvarez since being demoted there to AAA.
Yeah, I think that this entire situation has been very interesting because I understand why most people saw this as a punishment. I am not here to tell you or your viewers that it was a congratulations by any means. There is a reason why he was being sent down, right? But at the same time, I hope and I think that he wasn't viewing it that way. I think that as much as it was, punishment, maybe, I also think that it's an opportunity if you view it that way. For me, this has to do with, and I think a lot of the times when guys are getting sent down to AAA, especially in this fashion, it's about getting a guy's confidence back up, right? Confidence offensively and beyond. And whether or not people want to admit it, AAA is a good place to do that. I think when you're in the majors, every at bat matters. So it's hard to go up there and say, hey, let me just try something out here. That's not really going to fly. When you're in AAA, you're able to take some risks. You're able to switch some things up and you're able to get your confidence back. You mentioned it. He's hitting home runs. He's starting to hit the ball the other way with power. He does still have to get a little bit more consistent, but he's working on it. And I think one thing that might surprise people, maybe not, but I'm curious even your thoughts on this, is that the broadcasters here tell me that he actually has spoken quite a bit about working on his defense, including pitch framing. He's even having some fun with the ABS challenge system. As you know, they don't have that in the majors. They do have it at the AAA level. So a couple of times since he's been down here, he has challenged a couple calls. He has gotten them right. He's been celebrating that, with the dugout. So again, I think there's actually some other things that people might not even know that he's been working on, trying to cut down on pass balls, trying to have strong, accurate throws to catch runners stealing. I think initially Alvarez was supposed to be that power hitting catcher, and that was sort of his claim to fame. He sort of always had okay defense. But I think now, especially when you think about Terren, some of the things he's been able to do, some of the things Terren is good at, namely defense, I think Alvarez is really trying to work hard to prove that he's strong at all elements of his game so he can, in essence, get his position back. This was a gut punch, I'm sure, for him. But at the same time, I think maybe this was exactly what he needed. And I've been impressed with his attitude and the way that he's able to kind of handle this with grace. People don't think about the fact that, he literally needed to uproot his entire life and come to upstate New York. Like he has a one-way ticket, as Ashley Wenskowski would say, to Syracuse. That's not an easy position to be in. And he did a good job at it. You know what I mean? He's doing a good job. He has a good attitude.
Oh, great attitude, great head on his shoulders, for still being in his early 20s here. Because think about it, the guy, lights the world on fire right away with 25 home runs as a 21-year-old. And don't get me wrong, there were still many flaws to his game in his rookie year. Swinging and missing at so much at the same time. Need to get more polish on his command of zone, but an anomaly of a catcher to be doing that, because you can't name me one catcher in baseball, especially 2 years ago, doing that at his age. It just doesn't happen. I mean, the fact that Adley Rutschman hadn't even made the major leagues yet, for how old Alvarez currently is telling of just how heralded he is of a prospect and why we should not just write him off this fast. And you mentioned confidence. He spoke in a recent interview with Will Salmon and stated how, I'm always confident, but I don't have like a lot going right now. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I'm, oozing with confidence right now. I was sent down for a reason, but he can't dwell on that. He doesn't have time to dwell on that, as he said. But it does give him, as you mentioned, I'm glad you did, an opportunity to now breathe and really slow his game down and work not only offensively, but defensively, because you mentioned framing. Alvarez has casually been in the 100th percentile in frame rate since being sent down to AAA. He's been the best catcher in baseball in that regard, and that's quite the contrary from what he was doing at the major league level this season, which was the complete opposite. I mean, Alvarez, when he broke out a couple years ago, even if the bat was very swing and miss, you want him in there defensively alone. That's why you had the Hall of Famers and Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander going to bat for this guy to make sure that he's out there, because they want him catching their game. Like, that is how truly they feel about him and know how exciting he is of a young catcher. So to see Alvarez fall off a cliff the past year defensively too goes in direct hand with what you said with his confidence and just trying to get back to the player that is why the Mets initially signed him to that big signing bonus out of Venezuela, a power hitting catcher that's known for a great defensive rate, defensive framing, and hopefully blocking balls too, because we know that Alvarez was all over the place defensively leading up to that send down. It just was one thing after another. So that's going to be it for our latest video. I hope you enjoyed our segment. Again, that is Samantha Croston, who did a fantastic job as always. If you guys do not follow her on socials, make sure to do so and check out Why My Mets Fan podcast. Two of the best ladies in the game talking all things Mets every single week. You guys can check me out here as well as my other platforms. You know the drill by that by now. But that is Samantha Croston. This is Tyler Ward, aka Wardy, and this is how we're going to wrap up our latest Mets breakdown. Thank you guys all so much again for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.